I sat up from the splintered glass floor I found myself lying in, and quite how I'd survived that ordeal, I was unsure. I started to question what reality was anymore. Were the experiences I had only in my head, when I felt them to be real? And my head certainly had testament to that, as it was throbbing like someone had taken a baseball bat and smacked it at least 12 times. I stood up and crunched on the shattered glass and walked out of the dark street that awaited me. It was the same as I'd seen before, dark and dull like some Victorian nightmare. But now a white thin mist was billowing down the long avenue that stretched out as far as the eye could see. I placed my hand through the unusually warm mist and back out again as I continued to walk down the street. I stopped outside a small house that looked as if it had been derelict for years. Its windows and doors were covered by wooden beams. I approached the empty building and pulled the wooden beams of the door and let myself in through the crickety door. I lit a half-used candle and lifted it up in front of my eyes so that I might see. Across the room was a peg line of rats. I pulled one from the line thinking it dead, but once in my hand it woke up, bit me. With the shock of it biting my hand I flinched and it fell to the ground and ran off out of the doorway. My noise had woken all the rats on the peg line, which were now swaying as they tried to set their tails free. From the peg line that held them to the line, I ducked underneath to the back of the room, where a table and chair was set. I sat down upon the table, placing the candle there, and continued to look around the strange cabin I was in. In the kitchen sink was a blood-stained knife which was stuck into a cabbage that was on the dryer. Next to it was a half-drunken cup of tea. I got up and sipped the cold tea. As I was there, I pulled the knife from the cabbage and noticed oddly that the knife was covered in a red liquid. Looking closer at the cabbage and turning it with the palm of my hand, I noticed it was indeed not a cabbage at all, but a human man's head, gorged of its eyes and teeth. The strange thing about all these things I saw about me is that I felt no fear or oddly any strangeness. It was as if part of me was partly amused by such findings, and yet for any sane man this kind of pathology would be quite disturbing and unusual. I looked about the cupboards of this house, and inside I found other gruesome items. It was like a pantry of human entrails and body parts. I took some of these parts of what I'm not sure and started to make a clay-like creature. As I did, I felt the strangest, darkest sensation of my entire existence. As if something had walked over my grave. I turned, but there was nothing there, dropping the clay-like creature like a mess on the floor. I left this house that felt somewhat like home, but it had not been mine. I carried on walking through the white mist that flowed down the streets and avenues, till I found myself some more survivors. But at the moment they saw me, they ran off. I can only assume it was the sight of my destroyed face, or walking through the white mist. Maybe they feared me as if I were the black shadow that had pursued me, and then I remembered what had happened to him. That shadow had told me that it would consume me, and yet I was still alive, and he was nowhere to be seen. I saw another person running through the square from one street to another, behind a house, and pursued him. Maybe he was running from the black shadow. When I got to him, he must have been terribly ill and weak. As I grabbed his fleeing arm, it came away in my hand, leaving him reeling on the floor in his own blood. I bent down to help him, but he screamed. Maybe it was the sight of his arm in my hand, detached from his own body. I placed the arm down awkwardly, unsure what to do with it, and before I could say anything, he was dead. "Well done," said a voice. I turned around, scraping my heels on the floor, but there was no one there. I walked back down the street as the darkness descended. The thick black clouds fell low, distilling any of the sun's bright lights. I ended up back in a small disused house, where I had strangely brought the arm of that man and placed it into the refrigerator, where I found other such trophies, a pair of eyes and a line of teeth, all round a necklace made of what looked like an intestinal tract. I went up the stairs till I reached the bathroom, which I was in dire need of. But before I even got the chance to use it, I was struck by the sight I found in the bathtub. It was a dark black colour of mould and dirt, but inside was the real fright. It was a pool of jelly, congealed blood, which when I placed my hand in was already thickening up, and floating on it was a headless body, cut into smaller pieces, its legs, arms, chest, heart, lungs, all separated, but left in their anatomical, geographical positions, but no longer connected or within the body. Nice. I heard her voice again, I'm sure I did, but when I turned around there was no one to be seen. I looked back at the headless body, but his mouth was in the refrigerator, and even if it could still work, it could not throw its voice that far. I searched the other rooms to find them empty completely. No curtains, no carpets, no furniture, nothing. It was an odd feeling to be walking about the floorboards, but it also had an unusual death-like feeling, as when an occupant dies. All his house would be stripped by his surviving relatives, so that they might sell it off or keep it, and then the place where he had lived is just a mere ghostly shell. And maybe the man who lay in the bath was that owner once, when he still had his head intact. And yet this was the house that I had seemed to have chosen for myself, for I no longer felt the need to go to my real home, or even Andy's, where I'd spent such a time recently. And it felt that odd, but I knew not why. "Because this is yours," said the voice. I turned around, straight into the mirror, but the only thing in the room was me. I stared in front of me towards the edge of the mirror, trying to look behind it, thinking something must be speaking from then hiding. I waited, and then the voice spoke again. "I'm here." As I looked in the mirror, I noticed almost as if in slow motion that even though I was not speaking and was listening out, I could see movement in the mirror. As I focused on the middle of the mirror onto myself, to my horror, I saw my lips finishing the sentence. "Yes," the voice said in complete sync with my lips, but I had no feeling that it was me who was indeed speaking, and yet the evidence was staring me straight in the eyes. "What's going on?" I said under my own control. "You're of us now." "Us? Where are you?" "I'm you, silly." "But I'm me." "Exactly. We are the same." "I don't understand." "Oh, of course. You still think you're alive." "Well, of course I do. I'm speaking to you, aren't I?" "Life is such a complicated business. You died, my friend, when I consumed your body, and the remaining effluence of your soul, when you woke up earlier today, you were already of us, part of the shadow that has taken up this land. You are one of the fortunate ones." "Fortunate?" "Well, you could be completely dead. At least you can remember part of who you are, until that part of your soul leaves your body to join the rest, and you are left with the one that is growing within you, part of the darkness that was implanted in you when the master of darkness that spoke with you placed his powers within you." "Then who are you?" "I am the darkness within you growing, assimilating the part of your soul that remains, until I have metamorphosized, and then your body shall be mine." I did not know what to think, what to do, for I felt just the same, although some of my actions and feelings were not quite right. Was this how a killer or murderer might feel, that at any day he can mingle peacefully with friends, and then by night have the capacity to slay them? "You can do nothing. I am with you now. I am you. Soon these thoughts of yours shall be gone, and you shall be dead, and I shall live on, with the rest like you, me, the followers of the Master of Darkness, as we ravage any other survivors left." I ran from the mirror out into the street, straight into the path of men, who, upon seeing me, screamed and started to run. They knew deep within that I was evil, as I had done when I was captured by the darkness. I tried to shout to them that I meant them no harm, and yet, in all honesty, could I say that to be true? For was it not me who pulled that man's arm off? At least that part of me that grows darker, and so there was nothing I could do but to sit upon the darkened street, with the white mist travelling up it, the houses dark and gloomy, the clouds looming low, street upon street, covered in the shadows of darkness, that would move from street to street, zooming in on any survivors left, and soon I would do the same. be within the clouds, a shadow of my former self, a darkness that would hide until I saw the whites of the eyes, and down from the sky I would swoop and devour that human being. These thoughts and knowledge of this ancient desire and will were not my own, but that of the creature I was becoming. And at the moment of death, I felt the last part of me dissipate into the ether, and my eyes closed, opened black pupils dilating in a sea of darkness, as if I leapt into the air, joining the hordes of dark shadows that prey from above.